Thank you. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. It's January 9th, 2023, and I call this meeting to order. Could the Secretary please give us the roll of attendance for this evening?
Tonight we have present Steve Geister, Lorraine D., Tom Caldwell, Steve Rhines, Lori Connolly, Allison Gardner, Jose O'Connor, Amanda Serio, Emily Cavalier, Dave Humphreys, Judy Steele, Jay Funling, and Kristen Crisio.
Thank you. So the purpose of our meeting tonight is to go over 3 articles that have been presented to us by the Select Board for consideration by the town at the special town meeting in February. So in order to get started, we have representatives of the Select Board and our town manager, Nick, here tonight. If you could please come and give us a brief introduction to what the articles are, what we're looking at. Thank you, please, Mr. Arthur Doyle.
Thank you, Chair Humphreys. Good evening, members of the Warrant Committee. It's a pleasure for us to be here with you this evening at our Select Board meeting of January 3rd. The Select Board unanimously adopted or approved the 3 articles that you have on your agenda this evening. To accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 110A, regarding modified town clerk hours to election, change the treasurer collection position from elected to appointed pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 41, Section 1B, and purchase of Font Convent located at 930 Brook Road, Milton, Mass. With us, as you noted, is our town administrator, Nick Milano, and we intend to address 2 articles this evening on the warrant, the first and the third, the elections in Font Academy, and then to return to meet with you on Wednesday evening to discuss the treasurer position. So I will sit in the background, turn to Nick, and we have for the town clerk's office, our town clerk, Madam Susan Galvin, and Sean O'Rourke will be working with Mr. Milano on the Font warrant article.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'll just do a quick overview and summary of the 3 articles for you folks.
Thank you.
So as Chair Doyle just mentioned, we do have 3 articles on the warrant for the February 13th special town meeting, which is my birthday. So we're very excited to see you all on February 13th. I know, seriously. So Article 1 is, the language in it is to see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 110A, and to act on anything related thereto, submitted by the Select Board upon the request of the town clerk. This statute allows town buildings to close on Saturdays. I'll let the town clerk speak to it in a little bit more detail when I complete my overview of the 3 articles. Article 2 is to see if the town will vote to change the town treasurer collector from a position elected under MGL Chapter 41, Section 1 to a position appointed by the town administrator under MGL Chapter 41, Section 1B, and Chapter 65 of the Acts of 2016, as amended, and further to amend the general bylaws if necessary to accomplish the purposes of this article and to act on anything related thereto. As Chair Doyle mentioned, this would allow the town to change its treasurer position from elected to appointed. I grabbed the text of the statute here. I won't read it all, but the key pieces that you folks might want to know is that there are 2 steps in this process. The first step is a town meeting vote. That town meeting vote has to happen 60 days before the annual town election, at which there will be a ballot question on the ballot for the voters to vote on. As some of you may recall, this process has already occurred in Milton in 2018 at an October special town meeting. The town meeting voted to approve such an article. It was unsuccessful at the annual town election that following April of 2019. There are 3 possible outcomes. The first one certainly is that special town meeting might not approve it, in which case there will be no ballot question in April. Secondly, the special town meeting could vote to approve it and the question could pass in April. If that happens, any candidate that runs for treasurer and wins will be the treasurer until a permanent appointment is made. And the appointment under the article would be made by the town administrator, similar to how other department heads are made, appointments are made here in Milton. The third outcome, which is the one the town has had happen before, is that the special town meeting votes to approve, but the question does not get approved at the ballot in April. In that situation, the candidate that's elected treasurer will serve a full term, and Milton does the one-year terms. So that's just the background and what the article would do. We'll talk obviously more about it on Wednesday.
Sure. Yeah, I have a question. So how does this impact our current treasurer?
He is retiring and not running for re-election. If he were to run for re-election, he would be on the ballot. If town meeting votes on it, it would be on the ballot at this point, unless the select board chose to withdraw it at that point, if he chose to run. It was at conversations that he was not going to run that this resurfaced as discussed.
This has come up like multiple years, this discussion, probably 6-7 years since it came up.
Yep.
Okay.
Welcome.
Article 3, so Article 3 is the Fontbonne Convent proposed purchase. The language, I won't read it all, it's pretty lengthy, but this is the standard typical language that the town has used in the past for articles related to land purchases. So we took the language from when the town purchased land for the fire station from St. Agatha's last year and just reworked it for the purchase from the Congregation of Sisters of St. Joseph, who manage Fontbonne. So Sean will go more into the specifics of the property and the potential for school facilities. I'll just talk about process and background. Under state law, we have to abide by procurement rules. In this case, we had to issue a request for proposals for any properties over the case of $35,000, which is the case in this instance. So what we would do is we would issue an RFP, request for proposals, asking property owners to submit proposals to us to buy their land. In fall, we were alerted to the news that a portion of the Fontbonne property, the 3.27 acres, including the convent, was available. So the town reissued a request for proposals for land. We had previously done this a while back when the school building committee was first commencing its search for potential sites. So we reworked updated our request for proposals, put it out again. In December, we received the proposal from the Congregation of Sisters of St. Joseph. On January 3rd at a select board meeting, we reviewed the proposal. The select board authorized a counteroffer back to the sisters, and we're awaiting news from the congregation at this point. As you may know, it was listed at $8.5 million, and so we're in negotiations about what that purchase price might be. We're hopeful to have some news, and that the select board might be able to discuss it at their meeting tomorrow night on more specific on that purchase price to finalize it. So the next steps would be for the select board and the sisters to reach agreement on the terms and move to a purchase and sale. That purchase and sales is something that the select board will reach an agreement on, vote on to sign. However, it'll be contingent to 2 steps, the first of which being a special town meeting vote on February 13th to approve a land acquisition, to approve borrowing money to pay for it. That requires a 2/3 vote at special town meeting. The second step would be a ballot question to approve a debt exclusion to help pay for the purchase. That would be a majority vote on the annual town election. So just in terms of costs, I mentioned that it was listed at $8.5 million, so we ran some estimates on that price. The principal and interest on that would be approximately $650,000, depending on the length of time we had amortized the bond over and the interest rate. As we all know, interest rate environment is very different today than it would have been even a year ago. So it's good for our savings accounts, a little bit trickier when it comes to issuing debt. That said, the tax impact to an average single-family home would range, again, $75 to $100 a year for the life of the bond. That is, it's less than 1% of our overall levy, so that just puts into context what that cost might be. And I put on our current values for a average single-family home and average single-family tax bill currently.
That doesn't include renovation.
That includes, this is just to buy, so
Buy.
just the land acquisition.
I
Thank you. I should have
make sure.
clarified. No, yes.
And what's typically the length of the bond that you would look to?
Anywhere between 20 and 30 years. So we have different options based on what the interest rate environment is. The longer it is, the higher the interest rate, but the lower the annual payments can be. So it just kind of depends on what the economics of the situation look like. And that range should cover any of those options. And just to define debt exclusion, so if town meeting votes and a ballot question is approved, then that enables the town to assess property owners an additional increment over and above what is allowed under Proposition 2.5 for our annual increases. That additional assessment is for only this specific project and only for the life of the bond. So if it's a 20-year bond, that increase will be paid for 20 years. After 20 years, it'll go away. It's not a permanent increase to the amount of money that the town can raise from its property owners in terms of property taxes. So I know it's something, the last debt exclusion that was approved was for the fire station projects. Previous to that, the library and the schools. So it's something the town has used. And the reason the debt exclusion would make sense in a situation such as this is that debt service, while it's not millions and millions of dollars, is enough to be more than the operating budget could take into and pay without impacting the amounts of monies available to other town departments and to the school department, and just to run the town on an operating basis. So it would be an additional assessment on taxes over and above anything allowed by Prop 2.5 for the life of the bond. So I hope I didn't bore you with the municipal finance at the end there. But I just wanted to give kind of the context and background and process for each of the articles. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. Okay. So we've heard the starting lineup. Let's play ball. We want to put a runner on base. So let's go to the town clerk, Susan Galvin, to give us the presentation on Article 1.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me tonight. So the reason why I'm here is to discuss Chapter 41, Section 110A. Purpose of me asking for this is recently Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2022, also known as the Votes Act, changed voter registration deadlines from 20 days before all elections to 10 days before all elections. The annual town election is always scheduled on a Tuesday, so if you count backwards, 10 days would always fall on a Saturday. Our office isn't open. By law, we're required to be open till 5 p.m. So if town meeting was to accept this, it would allow us to not have to be open on that Saturday and revert to the Friday before and be open until 5. Yes, we'd be open extended hours, but it wouldn't be the full day. Typically, my office is still working on that Saturday, but it would allow us to focus on preparing for the election and such, as opposed to manning the office for those registered voters. Currently, statistic-wise, on our last day to register to vote, we average 1 to 5 people during the course of an 8-hour period. So I don't think the impact would be that great to our voters. They still will have the option to register to vote online up through midnight on the last day to register to vote. It only impacts our town election, state and federal elections, still would be that Saturday. So it's really just for our town elections.
So it sounds like what you're asking to do is to keep the town offices open later on a Friday instead of having to be open on a Saturday?
Correct. So essentially the law allows for the town to look at Saturdays as a legal holiday, essentially. Therefore, we wouldn't be required to be open.
Did you feel that this would help you do your job?
I do. And I feel that, myself and my staff could focus on that Saturday, thus allowing us not to work even additional hours on that Saturday and Sunday, which requires double time for staff.
Are there any other questions from the town for the town clerk?
is one. So Jay, I think we should be able to hear you.
Okay, hello. I'm a little confused from what you just explained. So it sounds like the law says we have to allow voter registration up until 10 days before the election, which would make it a Saturday. So if we close the offices, how are we not in violation of that law?
So this law, by adopting this law, it allows the town to treat that Saturday as a legal holiday, thus reverting to Friday, the day before, at 5 p.m. being the last day to register to vote in person.
So 11 days versus 10.
9 days versus
9.
10. Yes.
So if the law says people have the right to register for an election up until 10 days before, I still don't get how this is not violating that.
Well,
I'm sorry.
no.
Am I the only one?
Sure. Sure. Nick feels like he can.
I think it might be helpful to think about a different town that might have a town election on a different day of the week, and their registration deadline would then 10 days be on a Sunday, but they would be closed. They would be allowed to be closed already under the law on that Sunday. So we are treating Saturday in this case like a Sunday. Please correct me if that was a
Nope,
bad analogy.
no, that was a very good analogy. Did that answer your question, Mr. Fleming?
It certainly helped. You said people will still be able to register online that
No.
last Saturday?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's essentially just in-person voters that instead of coming in on that Saturday up through 5, they can come in Friday up through 5. Saturday is treated as, according to the law, a legal holiday, like a Sunday.
Okay. I guess I also have another question in that, so you said this is, going to have this specific effect, and maybe we're happy with this effect, but it's a very general thing. I mean, the law just says, if you adopt this, Saturdays are holidays for the town, period.
Correct.
So does that mean, is that going to have some other consequences? I'm trying to think of, I don't know what town employees, library employees work on Saturday, DPW worker. I don't know if DPW employees work on Saturday or not, but if they do, is this going to have, this is a very broad law we're adopting just to help with one office for 1 or 2 days per year. I don't know if that was in the former question.
I honestly can't speak to whether DPW and the library, whether it would affect their hours or anything like that. I don't know if Nick can, but it's certainly something I can check with town council. I know a number of other towns that have Saturday elections have adopted this. I certainly can reach out to them as well and see what the repercussions were, or would be.
No, I would agree with the town clerk's characterization that this is not unusual for communities to have, and it's specifically about town offices choosing to close and the legal requirements for them to be open not applying on that day, less so than it's, triggering any restriction elsewhere in terms of it being therefore a holiday. It's more about an office that's required to be open by law, may be allowed to be closed by law on that day if the town so chooses.
Yeah, to me, it seems like a reasonable request. The question for me too is there other, like fire, police, others, would that impact overtime for those folks as well? These are questions I'd have. Does that drive up, thus hitting the operating expense of the town? And we're looking at other articles that are going to increase tax burden by 75 to 100 per year. So those are big questions for me.
Yeah. No, and I certainly will reach out to town council and see if there's ramifications. Very good points.
I think we have a question from Oheni. So Oheni, hopefully you can, you should be able to.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Ms. Galvin, for your presentation. We always appreciate you. You are a good friend of this group, and we appreciate your work. I follow the member Fundling's question as well as the other comment that was made in the room regarding consideration of time and a half and time and a quarter on that applies on holidays for those people who work. So I think that really is important. The other question I had was regarding if it's 9 days, was there consideration given to just say, could we say instead of applying this law, which I also understand would make all these Saturdays a holiday, just adding another day and making it, letting people come in on the Monday and register. Just trying to think what their consideration of other ways of doing this versus shortening the period to make sure that we fulfill the obligation of the law, say at least 10 days and even go longer. With that at all, so it wouldn't have to be another day. And is there anything like that could have been considered?
To the best of my knowledge, it's not. I received this information from the Secretary of State's office that this is the law that would alleviate for those towns that have a Saturday election.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
I see Judy also has her
Judy.
hand raised.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I have this new computer barely set up. In the interest of citizens that work, say a 9-to-5 job, would we be able to open a few hours later on that Friday? I know that will incur perhaps some overtime money, which is, an expense for the town, but it would sort of compensate for those Monday to Friday, 9-to-5 job commitments where someone could have an after-work time to apply for voting.
Well, the law says till 5. I'd be more than happy to do so. As it will be more than happy to come in on a Saturday if that's what town meeting wants. I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you whether or not we could do that. Maybe the Thursday before be open.
Okay, any day, right, that
Yeah,
might accommodate
as opposed
after
to
work
Friday where
schedules.
the law specifically says 5 p.m., but maybe the Thursday before we could be open until 8 or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, I just want to offer a clarification in terms of Saturdays being treated as a holiday. I just want to go back to the statute and its language. Any public office in any city or town may remain closed on any or all Saturdays as may be determined from time to time. So it's not the fact. So yes, we're using an example of a holiday to explain how this would work, but it's by accepting this, it doesn't mean that Saturdays are therefore holidays. It's allowing town offices to close for the legal requirements for them to be open. So I don't want to, by not answering that, by create a misconception about what the intention of this is. So again, any public office in any city or town may remain closed on any or all Saturdays as may be determined from time to time if the town meeting so votes. So in this case, if we didn't do it as the town clerk notes, their office is required to be open. By accepting this provision, it now gives her office the option to be closed for that day if town meeting votes beforehand to allow the town to do so. So I just wanted to, I don't want to get too lost in the holiday piece of it. We're just using that as an example as to how it would work. So I hope that's a little clarifying.
Just a quick question. Susan, did I hear you say that the Saturday hours usually anywhere from 1 to 5 people? Okay, so it's not a large impact to the town.
Correct.
So I'm looking at it, what Nick just said, and it discusses any public office. So we're talking about the offices of the town, not the departments, such as DPW, police. And so then what they're talking about, as if it was a Saturday were a legal holiday, is just kind of just as if it was a legal holiday for that office, but not for the town. Okay, so I think that we could feel comfortable. I mean, that's a great point. Like, what would be, that Mr. Fundling brought up, what could be the unintended consequences of this if we declared everyday holiday subject to holiday pay and triple overtime? I bet you there'd be a lot of work getting done on Saturdays. So it's a good question. It's a nice catch. And thank you for the clarification, Nick.
And I see that Jay's hand is raised again. Jay? Is there anything to add?
Jay.
Yes, hello. A couple things. I'm looking at the law also, and the law does say that you treat that Saturday like it were a legal holiday, and then it references another law. And if you look at that other law says, if the last day to perform a task falls on this Sunday or legal holiday, do it the next day. So that certainly sounds like it would mean registering voters the following Monday, which is what I think Mr. Asari referred to earlier. But I'm sorry, what I really wanted to say was, when I read this law, it seems to say, any office, I'll cut out the superfluous language, any office may remain closed as may be determined by the city council, from time to time by the city council or the town meeting. So what we're voting on tonight, I thought was very general language, like we accept the terms. Why wouldn't, could we vote on language that says, we accept the terms of this law to close the town clerk's office on the Saturday, which falls 10 days before a local or state election? If we and as a consequence, town meeting, vote on language that says, we approve this law to close the town clerk on these specific days, would that still give is that legal? Would that give the town clerk what they want, and would it also avoid any unintended consequences?
Yeah, I would have to refer to town council to answer that question.
The way I'm looking at it is we're making that determination now, subject to the provisions of our town bylaws. And I'm unaware of anything that would prohibit us from doing this. So it says that we can make this determination from time to time. Now is a time. Now may be the time. We've been asked to do this by the select board and by the town clerk here tonight. So I think that we're vested, or having this conversation, and I don't think we're prohibited from doing this. Are there any further questions? Is there a motion? Steve?
Motion to approve the change as represented in Article 1.
Second.
Lorraine?
Right. Okay, Steve.
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Are we voting? Are we voting, or is there a discussion?
Oh,
My point exactly.
is there discussion?
Yes, I would like to discuss. This is Jay.
Yes, hi, Jay.
So the motion, as I understand it, is recommended the town vote to accept, there appears to be a typo there, vote to accept the provisions of MGL Chapter 41, Section 110A. I would like to propose an amendment. I'm not sure exactly how we do amendments with this team, but I'd like to propose an amendment to say all of that language, comma, and we can wordsmith this, comma, to allow the closing of the town clerk's office on Saturdays, 10 days before a local, state, or federal election. Then it seems to me that we're doing what the law said, and we're, as you just said, we're deciding from time to time, any public office in any city or town may remain closed on any or all Saturdays, as may be determined by us. So we're determining It's not all the offices, it's this specific office. And it's not all Saturdays, it's these specific Saturdays. So, and, you know, I know this may take some wordsmithing, may even take us coming back another night, but a different night, not an extra night. But if we specify which office and which Saturdays, I think I'll sleep a little better. Are people okay with that? I'll shut up now.
I see Kristen's hand raised
So
as
is the
well.
intent, so this was sent, you get this from the Secretary of State, correct?
Right.
And this is sent to you, this is sent when there is an election, when, in this, for this exact reason, for an election?
So when the Votes Act took place,
Yes.
the Secretary of State's office realized that many towns, aside from Milton, have their local elections. This only affects local
Yes.
elections on Tuesdays. Therefore, Saturdays would be. So they informed those clerks that if in fact they would like to not have to be open on Saturdays, because it's not just the town of Milton that has a low turnout for people registering to vote on that day, because of all the other alternatives. And let's not forget, there's automatic voter registration, so anytime you go to the Registry of Motor Vehicles for your license, for, you know, to purchase a new vehicle or anything like that, you are automatically registered to vote yet again. And people can vote online. So that's the huge draw right now. We don't typically get a lot of people who register to vote in person, not just on the last day to register to vote, but, you know, historically, all the time. I don't have those stats as to how many people, but I've talked so long, I forgot your question.
Yeah, it was more that the genesis of this was changing the amount of time required and seeing how it impacted the Tuesday election on office. So with this, the language that we're reading, I guess, is that specifically intended to be about elections, or
So,
is there a broader?
I think there's a broader, that
Right.
it allows individual
If needed.
offices.
As needed.
Off the top of my head, I don't know of any other departments or offices that are required by law to be open on a Saturday, or to be open on Sundays, as we are for early voting and such. So, in order to alleviate towns, this has been in effect for a long time.
Right.
So the way I look at it, I mean, I don't know if it's legal or not, we would have to check with town council. We could put it specifically for the town clerk's office, or to just have it there and, you know, if there was a need that would be open on a Saturday, if there was a great demand, certainly I would have the option to say, that's not working, we're gonna remain to be open on Saturdays. And, you know, that would just be the way it would be.
Another thing that we could do is with regards to Jay's issue was, you know, can we amend this? So the article is closed. So, you know, we have options. If we didn't like the language, we could be a no vote. Another way that we could address this was in our comment, is that we could, you know, we could raise the issue with regards to, in our comment, we could say the town clerk came to us to ask for the town office, clerk's office, to be able to be closed in order to do this, and that it was our intention, should we be in favor of this, that it would be, and we can put it in our comment, that this was geared towards that office. If the concern was that this would be very narrow and not be broad application. I'll mention that. Yeah, we got some hands up. Thank you.
I see Kristen's hand up first.
Hi, thank you. I guess my question is, you know, this seems very specific to this one Saturday that the clerk's office would be required to be open. I understand departments are functioning on Saturdays, but there's really, I can't think of, is there an instance where an office other than this day is open throughout the year? Or they're typically closed every Saturday, except this, they'd be required to be open this specific Saturday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Vote on reflection.
Judy's hand is up as well.
Judy?
Hi, I found Jay's insight into this Saturday dilemma interesting, and I know you explained how we can address this. Is there any easier way to include specific language that Jay was looking for, and still get this voted in for town meeting by us? Is there an amendment? Did I miss that part? Is there an amendment that can be thrown on this? No. Okay. I misunderstood, and thank you for clarifying.
Mr. Chair, the select board is meeting tomorrow night, and they are meeting on January 18th. So I'll defer to them if they want it. They have the ability to consider different language. Whether they would, obviously, is a different question, but that is, the article could be changed up until January 18th.
Without changing the body that we now have before us, but sort of, as Jay suggested, putting a comma and being more specific, and still make the town meeting vote.
Can I ask something? So, I'm a little confused about the suggestion that, okay, the warrant is closed, because I've often seen in the past where, for many articles, the article says one thing, to see if the town will do blah, 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 and the suggestion from the warrant committee is slightly different. That's what it seems to be here. The request we got from the select board was this one sentence, and our response will be a slightly different, slightly longer sentence, very much keeping in the spirit.
Okay.
Yeah. I know Mr. Milano's there. Also saw Mr. Zulis sitting in the back. Maybe he can have some historical insight that I don't have. But I think it's perfectly fine for us to vote for something different than what was proposed to us.
Did the town council review this language? Yes. And he's okay with the language, right?
Yep.
And I guess we've generally kind of gone through every iteration and we've decided that the only division that will be affected is the town clerk on these specific Saturdays.
Let's just vote on it.
I think, Jay, I understand you have these concerns, but I think I don't know. I think you're trying to find a needle in a haystack, maybe. I think the wording is probably okay the way it is.
I agree.
That's the way I feel anyway.
I agree. Let's just vote on it.
Oh, I see O'Henny's hand up.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening, sorry again. While I agree with that this is a needle in a haystack, I also agree with Member Pundling's comments fundamentally, because if you leave a piece of legislation open, if you leave a piece of, if we just leave an open trend, it can be applied differently in the future, as we've seen time and time again. I think Jay's suggestion is actually the right thing to do. Whether or not we want to do that in terms of making the time to do it is, I do not want Sue Galvin to work that Saturday. I think the town clerk should be closed. I agree. But can we find a way to do that that makes sense? Just loose ends. I don't think he's making a mountain out of a molehill. I think it's important, but not important enough to stop this if everyone else agrees.
Okay.
So,
So what we could do is, we had a motion that was made and seconded, but we didn't have the discussion yet. And procedurally, I think Jay's correct. We should have discussion. Jay, would you like to make a motion with regards to of the amendment of the language for reconsideration by the select board? He's muted.
I'm not sure what you would change.
Okay, did you say my name?
Right, Jay, do you want to make a motion with regards to that?
Yes, my motion would be to take the wording as it is and add on to the end, end, comma, okay, we accept the provisions of MGL chapter whatever, and then say for the purpose of closing the town clerk office on Saturdays, 10 days, I'm typing while I'm talking just because keep me saying, 10 days before any town, state, or federal election.
It's only local elections, Jeff.
Local town election.
I don't know what our procedures are in this group, but if it's relevant, I'd like to say I'm making this as an amendment, and maybe the whole team can vote on the amendment, yes or no.
So,
I'm not trying to, sorry, go on.
understood. Is it seconded?
Second.
Seconded.
No.
Do we want to have a discussion?
No, let's just vote on it.
See if, on the chair.
What's the time?
Okay. There being a motion on the floor, having been seconded, there not being a call for further discussion, Emily, would you please conduct the roll call vote?
I was just going to make one comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
I think, we have some things that we vote on and discuss that we kind of know are going to go on for a long time. And then there are some things that maybe we go into anticipating a really short discussion. I just want to comment that I think, everyone is engaging here, like whether they're extending the conversation or not. There have been times where I felt like I'm the one too, making it go on longer. But I just want to say, I think, we're all going into this in good faith, and I want us all to remember that. Any other discussion?
So I'm not sure what we're voting on. Are we voting on?
Jay's amendment.
Jay's amendment.
To Jay's amendment to to ask the select board to incorporate the language that he proposed. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know if we're asking the select board anything. Sorry, I think the select board proposed one thing, we're approving something ever so slightly different.
Right.
Sorry.
So there's a motion, it's seconded. Can we vote on whether we're going to ask the select board to consider this amendment?
So I'll take the roll.
Please.
All right, Steve Geister.
No.
Or Lorraine.
No.
Tom.
No.
Steve R.
No.
Lori.
I'm okay with it. I'm the yes.
Yes. Okay. Allison.
No.
JJ.
No.
Amanda.
No.
And then we have Jareen.
I'll say yes for Jay.
Judy.
I'm going to say yes as well.
Jay.
Yes.
Kristen.
She's on mute.
I think she can.
Kristen, can you unmute?
Let's see her up there more.
Let me just double check if she's.
I think she dropped.
Oh, yes. Let me get her back on. All right, Kristen, can you unmute now?
No.
And O'Henny?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And Dave?
So I'm only voting if it's a tie.
But the noes have the majority, so abstain.
Okay, so the noes have the majority. So there was amendment, it did not carry. did not pass. Right, that motion. Is there another motion on the floor?
Can I make a motion that we approve what is in front of us and not modify it?
Is that seconded?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Would we like to have further discussion? Would you please conduct the vote?
Steve Geister,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Steve R,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Shereen,
Yes.
Judy,
Yes.
Jay,
Oh,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yeah.
O'Henny,
Abstain?
and I am a yes. And Dave, I believe that means you can abstain.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Susan Galvin, Town Clerk.
Thank you.
And thank you, Emily, for your kind words that we should all take to heart. Moving on. Article 3. Could we please have Mr. Sean O'Rourke, the chair of the School Building Committee, for a presentation with regards to... And Nick, do you want to just join him? Because I'm sure that there might be questions from time to time. Do you just want to come on up? Or
I'll rejoin it.
if need be? Okay, thank you. Please, it's whatever's going to, let you put your best foot forward. Thank you for joining us.
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to provide a refresher that Mr. Zulus, Vice Chair of the Select Board, is also the Select Board's representative to the school.
Wonderful. Thank you. Welcome. Mr. O'Rourke, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe I'm just trying to get on the Zoom to share my screen.
I think you have to rejoin.
Have to rejoin.
Everybody?
Yeah. It just restarted.
Okay.
So people are rejoining. I swear it wasn't me.
It's Windows. Is it Windows 10?
Getting people back in. Panelists.
Okay.
I just need permission to share my screen.
Let me. Ask to needs to share screen.
Recording in progress.
Wait, can I do? Can I do? I think it's. Oh, who can share? Host and panelist. Okay, hopefully you should be able to now. Dave, you may want to comment on just for people coming back in that we had to restart the Zoom.
Okay. Are we back on? All right. Thank you to the public for bearing with us. We had a computer crash on our end. We're back up and running. So now we recognize Mr. O'Rourke. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the Warrant Committee. First off, I appreciate everybody doing this. I know a special town meeting's a little burdensome for everybody. But, the importance of this, it kind of warrants it. Our committee, as I mentioned before, is made up of 9 members. With me tonight is Mr. Zulus, who's one of our appointees from the select board, and also a member of Betty White from the school committee. So, we'll hopefully get everything covered if there are any questions outside my boundaries. What I wanted to do is kind of go over a timeline. As everyone's aware, we had an article last May to kind of run through a land swap at Gow Road. The last time I had met with this committee was in the fall to kind of give a purview or update on kind of the changes we were doing while we pulled the article back. During that time, survey work was going on and ongoing. Immediately, or very recently after that meeting, we became aware of Fonbon Convent on the market for sale. So the school building committee, along with the town, as Mr. Milano referenced earlier, worked to develop an RFP rather quickly. Fonbon has responded to that RFP, and we're currently in negotiations. The update for us right now is to aim for the February town meeting, special town meeting that we're doing. Get approval through that, and then also the follow-on debt exclusion vote that would happen in April. And then additionally, subsequent services that we need to do for design and construction coming in a May town meeting. So, as I mentioned, the RFP was issued in November. We had 1 response from Fonbon, which was good because our last RFP, we didn't get any responses. So the convent is a 45,000 square foot existing building. It sits on a site of about 3.5 acres. There are wetlands behind it. We'll go through the plot plan of that later. It's in a residential A zoning class, and currently, the estimated cost that we were talking about is $7.5 to $8 million. It was advertised at $8.5 million, but we're hoping the evaluation comes through lower. So what this did for us was, as school building committee, we had to shift gears. Our previous proposal we were looking at was a middle school at Gow Road. The middle school program wouldn't fit here. As many of you are probably aware, I kept talking about Gow Road we needed because it was about 6 acres. This is 3.5. So what we did is look at it and say, what can we fit in that 3.5 acres in that site? In 2019, the facilities advisory subcommittee of the school committee, it's always long when I say that, I apologize. They did a study back then, and we used that initially as our roadmap, so we kind of went back to that to look, how does Fonbon Convent fit into that study that was there? So what we did is we looked at it, there's an early education center option that was on there. If anybody recalls the history of this, it was essentially the second option behind the elementary school that was looked upon. So the driver of this whole thing, I know last time I met with you, I had, for lack of a better word, old numbers, the year-old. I've updated the enrollment numbers so we can kind of review them. This is, the historical enrollment of the overall district from 2008 when the schools were built and reconstructed to currently where we are now, along with projections going up. The other one that comes in, and this graph is really telling to me, just overall in the town, it's census data of, how populated our town is and how much it's increasing quickly. So as you can see, from 1980 to 2010, a 30-year period, we went up by about 1,100 people. In the past 10 years, we've gone over 1,600, so a lot more people in a lot shorter time. The other one that's in there too, as we talk about these are the 40B developments that are coming. I'm sure everyone's aware of the number of these that are being proposed and approved, so these are coming. The key thing to take into account too with the 40Bs is until they're permitted, they're not accounted for in any of the projections for them. So all the ones that are getting approved this year weren't accounted for in those projections previously. So what you're seeing here is our current enrollment. I drew the yellow dashed line in there, which is essentially the building capacity at the elementary school level at 1900. As you can see, we're operating essentially one grade level above what our capacity is. This one, I asked you to focus a little bit. So when you look at these graphs, they're not linear. You have to read them on an angle. The reason being is grades progress and matriculate to the next level, right? So when you're looking at these, you have to read them on a skew, right? So what I tried to do is I looked at the last peak that we had in 2019, right before COVID, that's when we hit our maximum increase. And I traced it back to the kindergarten size, right? So the kindergarten size there was 350. If you look at the kindergarten the year before that, it's at 314, all right? So you went up by 36 students, which doesn't sound like a lot. When you think about kindergarten, 18 children create a class. So that's 2 classes just in 1 year that got created there. That 350, the next year when they jumped into first grade, went up to 363, an additional 13 students. The next year after that went to 371, and then after that it kind of levels off, and that's kind of the trend you see. So those initial bumps that you see in low numbers in kindergarten or first grade propagate through. As you look at the graphs a little bit further, and you start looking at the numbers recently that are there, they're all big numbers like that. So this wave that I talk about of enrollment that's coming, and the reason people ask, you know, oh, this is going to go away, it's a short-term thing. This is my proof that I always try to refer to. And it's tough when you look at these numbers to look at the graph and really dig into it. Now, the other one that I did, that 350 number at the kindergarten level, when I looked at that, I just picked that as a target and said, you know, let's look at that and see what happened. Before 2014, two grades, and they're the same grade if you look at the years, because it's 1 year and then they bump up to the next one. Look after 2014 at 350 as a total number. That's when I look at this. These are those waves that I'm talking about that you know the district has been dealing with now for 4 to 5 years. So, yes.
So what do you mean about the 350? So the 350 is a magic number because
350 was basically a number that I took. If I go back 2 graphs.
But you're talking 2014 right there.
So you're talking about that big bump when you went to 2014, the kindergarten.
These are accurate numbers from 2014.
These are historical numbers,
Okay,
correct?
and these are audited, like you went in.
Correct.
Okay, and then these people were also, like, so that's that kindergarten class that came in.
Yeah,
So you're saying as a high, like you're looking at that as a high?
Not even high. I'll go to that in a minute. What I tried to do is just pick a number, right? So this slide that I looked at, when I took the peak and worked it backwards to the kindergarten, the number was 350, and it kind of stuck out to me. So I said, on my own, you know, for me, I'm a visual person when I look at graphs. And I was like, all right, let me take 350 as a number. There's no magic to it or anything like that. It was just a number that I picked based on that peak. So that kindergarten class at 350, as it went up, pushed that peak up higher.
Right.
Right? So as I started, apologize, a little bit of delay.
So many kids are going to private school outside of Milton right now. I don't see where that's incorporated anywhere in these numbers. I mean, I know half my neighbors are going to BC High or they're going to other places. I don't understand that. I mean, that's fine. They start with kindergarten here, but they move on and then they leave our schools.
What we're talking about is the elementary schools right now. So BC High doesn't offer elementary. So the numbers that we're giving here are the actual enrollment in the district. If there are kids that are going to private education through this and not reflected here, that's actually a good thing, because if they're in here, the numbers will be worse.
Has there been an audit of residential every year of students that live in the town that are being looked at? So I know you have to do a residential check in kindergarten, but have we thought about, or has that been looked at to make sure that we're actually, with the numbers, because, you know, if we're overcrowded and are we really taking, you know, the proper measures and making sure that as the taxpayer is paying for that each person is really, you know, supposed to be, you know, coming to here.
I'm with you. So, from my end, I'll defer, because it's not really a school building
Okay.
question.
We check residency.
Sorry, hold, just, actually, just hold.
Do you want to just,
We check residency several times during the school years. Currently, I think it's kindergarten or first grade, and then it's sixth grade, and then it's entering high school. We also check Blue Hills Regional and Norfolk County Aggie for all of our students. And we have a residency coordinator, so that everybody has to come in and show all their paperwork and prove that they live here. And we also get phone calls from people who say, I don't think this family lives here anymore. So every single call that we get gets looked at, and you know, it's a very complex process that we go through.
To get in. But then after you get in, you don't check again?
Yeah, we do. Sixth grade.
Sixth grade,
You have
so
to
that's
go
5 years.
You have to go back in sixth grade and go back in high school, ninth grade.
Yeah, I'm just, okay.
I would say from the parent perspective, I have a pre-K kid, and like we had to do all the residency checks last year and
Oh,
have
yeah,
to do it again.
I know what
for
I know what it
kindergarten.
entails, but once you do it once, you don't have to do it for another 5 years. That's my concern of anybody coming in to the schools. I mean, I've known people who've been aware of us, you know, paying for the kids that, I mean, and I don't blame them, you know, I mean, we have great schools. It's an honor to us, but, you know, there's a 5-year gap, and we're bursting at the seams. So to me, that's an eye-opener in this discussion, for 5 years to not be checking to make sure that every person is, you know, accounted for and where they live. And, you know, I moved. Nobody asked me for residential check, you know, I mean, unless I told them I moved. So I'm just, it is something to be thought of, especially when we have an overcrowding issue. Just pointing it out, and putting it out there that it's something to think about.
I apologize on the delay. If I
No,
was talking quicker, I'm seeing this and it takes a second to go up there, so. Yeah. So the numbers that you were seeing there, this is the current grade configuration for the town or the district. So we've got 4 elementary schools, a single middle school, a single high school. The proposal that we're looking at with Early Childhood Education Center is to essentially strip out preschool and kindergarten out of the elementary school, and by doing so free up space, and then move those grade levels down to what we're going to be constructing in Upland.
Yeah, how many pre-K classrooms? I mean, you've got each of the elementary schools starting with first to fifth.
Yep.
But you're saying we're going to take pre-K out of those schools. How many classes are in there that are pre-K and K?
Total classrooms.
Yeah.
So and we'll get to that
Okay.
when we talk to Fontbonne, but it's 26 classrooms that will be constructing in Fontbonne, 7 of which will be pre-K, 19 of which will be kindergarten.
And that's what we have today.
Is the pre-K open to all enrollment? So is it low income or sped?
It's a combination of. All right. No. So the town is required by law to provide any child who's special ed from age 3.5 up until kindergarten, and then they go into kindergarten programs. But those children then will have what they call role model students with them. So I think it's a lottery systems right now because we don't have enough space. But I think basically the preschool kids are combined with the special ed kids in classrooms. And right now, I may be incorrect, but I know we have 2 programs at the Tucker, and I think we have 3 or 4 classrooms at Cunningham Collycott right now.
So it's special needs, but do we also open up to everyone? Okay, I was just
Correct.
thinking
So
that if we had.
It's not unlimited enrollment in pre-K. So
Correct, yeah, no, I know it's a
cap.
lottery after that.
Perfect.
But my point is that if we were this will alleviate the classrooms, but if there was sort of a need, there's other avenues amongst the town, like preschool programs that we could have team partnered with, possibly to create more classroom space. Versus, and then, so we could lower the number of needs in our Tucker and our Cunningham Collycott. But this will alleviate if we'll have more space with the Fontaine. But again, then I want to understand how long it would take for the Fontaine. But if we were in need of classrooms and we addressed the special needs, or let's say we opened it up to like low income, we could open up more classrooms in our Cunningham and our Tucker space if we worked with some of the preschools in the town. Because there's a need for those to fill those positions. From what feedback from citizens was that there was preschools that are open slots amongst the town that they would be willing to work with. The town of Milton schools, if they meant opening up classrooms in Cunningham or in Tucker. So just something to think about as well.
One thing I'd like to add though is there is a tuition component of the pre-K program. I also, we all pay tuition. But there, I mean, like kindergarten and up, there's no tuition component, but the public school.
I went through the kindergarten.
Yeah, some towns and cities though have universal pre-K, or like if you get a spot, there's no tuition. So there is money coming in from those students. I would just say from the pre-K perspective that, my family's had great, so I don't want to downplay the experience with other preschool programs. There is nothing like a preschool education from the town of
100%,
Milton.
but we're talking about space issue.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I'm just saying it's not something
right.
that can just be replaced, is what I would say. Like, it is transformational, the experience of going to
I mean, it was
pre-K.
great if the Fontaines can do that. I'm just saying that if our schools right now, that's my concern, is the space.
It's Judy.
Hi, thank you. I lost my Zoom for a few seconds and had to reboot it. Was it mentioned how currently, say this year, how many students are in the pre-K and K programs this year? Approximately.
Go back to the graphs. That's what it is.
Yeah, sorry I lost connection.
And on the connection, that was us, Judy. The Zoom crashed, so
Yeah.
it was us, not you.
So
It's 489.
yeah. So the numbers that are on the graph are 2022. It's cut off on my screen. I apologize, but
Yeah, it's not on my screen. I have this other weird thing going on. Apologize. If you could repeat for me the numbers for 2022-23 school year.
2022 that's up there is 147 in pre-K, 342 in kindergarten.
342K. Thank you.
No problem. So, not to bore you with graphs, but just kind of back to it again, being a visual person, when we look at taking that component of the graph for preschool and kindergarten, stripping it out, it brings that number, overall numbers that we're looking at below that 1900 value that we have for capacity in there. So, as we evaluated this as an option, we looked at it and said, it works. So, the other one that I've touched on, I hope everybody has seen it. I didn't want to take up 5 minutes of time to present the video that we did before, but we just wanted to go over a couple things. The most telling one to me is the Collycott Cunningham Library and the conversions for there. The whole reason we're here with a lot of this stuff is, the schools were reconstructed, rebuilt in 2008, and they're at a state that is not representative of a project that recent. So, when you look at it, just the areas of that library that have been converted to classroom, to office space and stuff like that, I invite you to go up and take a look at it. It's staggering. And by doing that, it compresses the library, it compresses kind of the free space. The image on the bottom left is a second grade school classroom, you know. You know, office interior, you know, partitions, no ceiling, no acoustical separation. You know, you have students learning in that environment. Personally, for me, it's unacceptable. The other parts, you know, as you look through the library, as I said, it compresses that overall library. This is kind of indicative across the entire district. Another one, I believe this is Tucker, you know, the gymnasium is the classroom in the gymnasium, you know. You know, if this isn't indicative of overcrowding. Another one, Glover, music in the cafeteria. And when you look at the slide, I ask you to pay attention to the projector that's up on the stage, right? So when you go to there, and you go to the next slides, this is where they're at. So you have kids that get displaced out of their music class, and they got put up to a stage. The one that hits me is they sit on the floor. There's no desks. You know, you have students sitting on the floor of a stage doing classes. The other one, carts. So all these classrooms that get converted, the supplies for those classrooms now go into carts and they get wheeled around. So you have teachers unloading, reloading every time they do a class, again. And then finally, you know, your hallways, you know, they're servicing kids in the hallways. You know, the overcrowding video, like I said, I'm not playing again, but you know, I hope that you did watch it, and if you haven't, ask that you do. So where I left off, you know, on our last presentation, you know, where we were at this fall was, you know, to address the temporary, similar to what you were saying, was looking at modular classrooms, you know, some type of short-term solution that we could come to fairly quickly, and that's what we looked at. As the modular classroom option evolved, you know, the estimated cost to do this, we were looking at the high school to put these in, $7 to $8 million to put them in, mainly for the site work that would have to go on to get plumbing, electrical, you know, stuff, utilities out to them. So at the same time that we were diving into that option to execute it, this is where Fontaine came up, at that same price tag for $7 to $8 million. So for us, you know, when we looked at $7 to $8 million for temporary modular classrooms that we were going to pull the trigger and start pushing on, Fontaine, we looked at it and we said, that might be a better use of that $7 to $8 million. This is the site plan that I talked about, so we're just going to dive into Fontaine now. The frontage of it is along Center Street. There's two entrances there. The back side of it, highlighted in green right now, is the dense green or the wetlands, and the lighter green or the dash line, you know, right extending beyond that, almost to the corner of the building, is the non-disturbance zone. So we'll be working with the Conservation Commission as we start developing the site. What I wanted to do is kind of, you know, review, you know, our take. So myself, other construction professionals in my committee have walked this entire facility. We became familiar, like we dove into it head first, you know, when it became an option. The key was like, how do we fit a school in here? You know, what does it look like? Can we make it work? So as you look down the hallway, and you know, I wanted to give pictures of what it looks like on the inside, so people don't think we're just, you know, getting the keys and putting a school in there right away. There's a lot of work to be done to this. So, you know, the existing hallways run down. There are dormitory rooms on each side. The rooms that you see look like this. So there's a significant amount of renovation that has to happen. There's some areas that are wide open that may be easily converted to a classroom. One of the unique things they have here too, being a convent, has a chapel. And you know, our anticipation is this would be an auditorium, a gymnasium, you know, something open for the students. So, you know, when we looked at this, you know, typical kindergarten classroom size is about 1,250 square feet. You know, a box 50 by 25. When we laid that over the dimensions of it, it just doesn't work with the walls. We were trying to hopefully just work within the walls that are already there and hopefully work with that. That wouldn't work. So as we started investigating it further, it just realizes it's a much heavier renovation than what we were anticipating. So what that does is that type of renovation under the state building code is referred to as a level 3 alteration. And it deals with when you're modifying more than 50% of the floor space there. it triggers and basically says you have to bring everything up to code. So for us, it's fire protection, HVAC, handicap accessibility, structural, electrical, information technology, and a big one for me, energy conservation. So what we're doing is, school building committee, we have enough professionals on us, and we could do that type of stuff. We want an independent person to come through. ERA Architecture has a long history with the district. They were in charge of the last school building project. So we contracted with them to do a feasibility study. And essentially what they're looking at is to make sure there's no fatal flaws as we're moving forward. They're going to develop educational program layouts, and then at the end come through with an order of magnitude cost estimate for us. With that is the end of perfect timing.
So questions? I have a question. So when you presented to us last fall, I think it was, you said that you had spent all the money that you had to look at the land swap and everything, and you guys are out of money. How did you come up with more money? Because it certainly didn't come to the Warrant Committee for more funding.
Correct. So the ERA study, the feasibility study, is being funded by the school committee. The cost of that was $18,500.
Correct.
So
and that's enough to get through the process to remediation and everything that may need to be done with that building, because it's antiquated. It's probably
this is a simple feasibility study that's going to be done over the course of 5 to 6 weeks.
And will that be completed?
Early February is our goal.
How is it? So I'm thinking from a homeowner standpoint, when you're buying homes, you have to go through negotiations. How does that financially work when making a commitment, but then you need town approval of their election, they're voting? How does that all work from the standpoint of?
I'm worried it's a money pit. Because it's an antiquated building that's got to have lead, it's got to have asbestos, it's got to have all kinds of bad things in that building, and you may have to level it and start over if you want to put a school in there. So, to me, it's a very risky business. Huge liability, potentially.
Just from the process, if you don't, I'm curious about that process, how that works, I don't understand it.
Yeah,
so if we vote and then what you're committed to or because if somebody else came in, and I guess I don't understand that.
Sure, so the goal is to get a purchase and sale agreement signed, and that would be subject to approval at town meeting and subject to the vote of the town in April. Okay. Similar to what we did with the fire building land. We entered into a PNS. In that case, we made it subject to town meeting because we didn't need to do a debt exclusion. So this would be subject to those two conditions.
Okay.
But my concern is not just purchase and sales agreement. That's a pretty easy process to go through. My concern is what's remediation, what's going to need to be done to that building, what's going to cost. Is it going to be, we're going to buy an $8 million building, and then we got to put another $38 million into it. So how is that going to be
I guess
managed?
the other part of it is, are you still doing Guile Road too? And I see that's a huge, we have to know these things. Because if you're going to do Guile Road and you're going to do this, we're in an inflation. Cost of goods is going up, the materials. So, how much can we put on taxpayers?
I'll answer that one. So, so with Guile Road right now, with Fonpon going forward, we would not be going through. If everything passes and Fonpon is approved, my intention is not to go back to Guile Road for a second.
So you get shot down on Guile Road though, by legal?
We have not.
I thought the state said that was not legal based on the switch and everything and based on what the intent of that land was?
We have not.
Now, would that mean
That's what we
a
heard.
project of developing Pierce and developing?
So what happens is we're addressing the elementary school only.
Okay.
Component of
Sure.
the overcrowding. The middle school component is still outlined. So that same space study that was done had a component of that, of adding on to the middle school.
Yeah, it's the elementary space needs study.
Correct.
Yeah,
So,
I'll take a look at it.
Perfect. So as part of that, they had an addition that was put on there. Essentially, the concept on that one was to move 5th grade up to that. So we might resurrect something like that in the future if the middle school becomes, an issue. So essentially, our goal for school building committee is to, you know, construct Fontpond, get an early education center in there, and then keep an eye on the middle school and track it. And then if it becomes a similar problem to what we're doing, we would come back at, you know, some point in the future. That date, I don't know.
Yeah. No, have you guys looked at, and this is probably not for you, but the special needs, for those who, would that eliminate some of the costs that we spend as a town?
Kristen has a hand up.
For
You see that?
those who need retirement outside of the town.
Yep.
I just want to make sure
No,
that
thank you, thank you.
Those would be, I don't know how that would address it. It's a
I'll-
space
I'll-
issue.
I'll happily address that, because that's actually one of the points I wanted to make tonight. The significant component for out-of-district placements for special ed, right? Part of the reason that occurs is the requirements of those students or the needs of those students can't be met right now because we don't have the space. So what happens is those students have to go out of district to get their needs met legally. And because of that, it triggers tuition, transportation costs in the excess of $5 million, all right? So the good thing is early on, we're getting the numbers for that. The special ed component right now of the population for the students is increasing. 5 years ago, it was 15% of the overall population. Now it's 20, so it's increased. That number increasing, those students also require additional space, right? So they have their classroom space where they're integrated with their peers, and then they have separate space that they go get services in. That separate space, we don't have it right now. So this is what's causing some of that out-of-district
Like
placement.
the hall, is that what you're talking about, like the hallway thing, or are you talking about literally for programs?
Literally for programs. The one that I showed in the hallway were just general students, it was not special ed students, because legally you can't do that.
Right.
So for us as a committee, we're aware of that, and that's one of the things, like, we look at Fontpond as a faster option for construction, right? That we could address this quicker, and by doing that, start to flip that expenditure, if you want to call it that, which it is, and reduce that down. And that should play into, you know, the overall financial aspect of the project.
Now, there's also, speaking about the Reebok, the Canton space to do that as well. And has that been no longer on the
So for right now, I'm only talking about this.
Okay, I just want what we need, I'm just trying to understand where we're going, you know, what our options are here. That's what we need to be aware of, thinking of it. So I just want to know, not even a possibility anymore.
That one, I believe, if it goes forward, would be on the May town meeting.
Okay.
So so the option for that would be renting temporary space. It's not a permanent solution. So in lieu, again, of construction trailers for the students, that I believe is an option that was being looked at. Where that stands, whether it's, there's an article ready for it to be submitted this week for May's town meeting, I don't know. Because, right, and I only say that because it wasn't on the school building committee doing that, it was the facilities subcommittee of the school committee before that was investigating it.
Okay, thank you. Kristen has a question, I think. She has her hand raised.
Hi, thank you. I just was wondering, I know we can't really estimate, you know, until you have the study back, you know, what it would cost for building, but do we have well, I guess, would that also include, because I'm guessing that the kindergarten classrooms at the elementary schools would need a bit of construction if they were going to be converted into non-kindergarten classrooms. Is that something that would be included in the budget as well?
So that's a really good point. It's one that, you know, I also want to make tonight too, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Yes, so part of this project is, you know, the renovation and construction of Fontpond, but at the same time, the existing classrooms that will remain at Glover, Collicott, Cunningham, and Tucker will also have to get renovated, you know, partition walls put up, you know, additional work into those, so that would be part of any of the projects that we're doing. If we did Gow Road and we strip grades out of the elementary school, we would still have a component of that in. So, you know, if you're looking at it comparing the options, it would happen in either of them.
So because the kindergarten classes are bigger?
Yeah,
And you
correct.
make them into, yeah, okay.
Yep, so rough numbers, kindergarten, kindergarten and preschool classrooms are about 1,200 square feet. They're larger because kids need more space. There are cubbies built in there, but also for a perfect location, there's dedicated bathrooms for them. For some of the converted classrooms that we have right now, they're adjacent to bathrooms, right? And what they do now is they take over that bathroom and limit it. So, what used to be a common bathroom is now taken away from the general population in the school. But to the member's point, there will have to be conversions done there because you're not going to put a regular 900 square foot classroom into a 1,200 square foot space.
So when do you think you'll have an estimate of what the total cost of all this vision is? I mean, is it going to be before town meeting or?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, early February with the DRA study that's going on.
So they'll come up with an estimate to do all the modifications, including in the other schools too, or just in the new school?
Probably just in the new school.
So we're talking.
And then, is there an estimate of the operational cost of the school, in addition to like the construction costs?
Not yet. Part of the discussion, one of the things that we try to make everybody aware too with this is we're not building this project or any of this for new kids moving in, new populations coming. They're already here. So the teachers are already on the books. They'll be moving over to a new facility. There will be obviously janitorial staff, additional amount of staff, but it's not like we're building a new facility, going out pulling recs to hire a whole new staff of people to go into that facility. So,
Except the heat. You have the heating and everything.
of course, utilities.
And gas, utilities are not cheap these days.
Yeah, I get it.
So, I mean, but yeah, no, I think that would be important to know too.
Yeah, and specialists and administration as well. And then I guess final question is, I had just always, because my daughter is in the grade 6 class that, is the largest class. And it doesn't seem like in those kids, especially in the younger, they were remote, in the younger grades, and, they are in these larger classrooms. It seems like those issues just aren't going to be fixed in a time that's really going to help the kids in the district who have been impacted by the space issue at all. They're going to continue to be in large classrooms, and if there's any way we could use the COVID money to address the space issues, seems like a good way to use that COVID funding.
Yeah, my response to that, it's tough because none of the work that we need to do to address the overcrowding is fast. And I mean, any of these construction projects are timelines, years when we're talking about this. It's not months. Bonbon, if it passes in February town meeting in April, isn't going to be open for kindergarten in September. So
I think that she's saying more like, that will have to be in the budget for how school handles additional support in the classrooms. I think for the crowding and support assistant teachers. So we'll have to look at that when it comes through.
yeah, and that component of it, sorry to talk about hundreds, but for a school building committee,
Yeah.
we don't handle staffing.
Yeah.
We handle education.
No, totally.
We're here to build a building.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I get it.
I'm trying.
I'm not. That's why I said it's more of additional support in the classroom, not building.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we did appropriate ARPA funding for additional support. in the
Yeah,
classroom. I can't give you the numbers now,
Yeah.
but there were a fairly significant portion of the ARPA funding we sent into the school department for that kind of support. There were math teachers, there were reading teachers. There was
I mean, as many
additional
teachers as we can get, I think that's what's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now on the feasibility, the due diligence we're doing is not only the feasibility, it's also we've commissioned our separate appraisal on our side to make sure we would be getting what we're paying for. All of these costs that you're pointing out, the way I look at this is if the Fontbonne option turns out to be a good option, right? It's something where we could move a lot faster. We're talking about a couple of years as opposed to 5 or 6 perhaps to build a new building. It would be a less expensive option to renovate that building. then it would, I think significant actually. The estimates are it'd be significantly less expensive than it would be to build new buildings. However, as Sean mentioned, I think what you're gonna see is you've got this article for a special town meeting to see if it makes sense to buy this, and hopefully we'll have the DRA's feasibility study by then, and we can make that judgment. It'll be subject to town meeting, it'll be subject to the ballot question in April. But you will see for the May town meeting, at the recommendation of the school building committee, I think you'll see a Guile Road article. And as Sean mentioned, if everything, so we have to go down parallel tracks. So we'll go forward with the Guile Road article. If town meeting passes the Fontbonne article, and then the voters pass the Fontbonne article in April, the intention, I think, the intention is, at least certainly my intention would be to pull the Guile Road article at that point. And I think, that'll be subject to the school building committee's vote, but I would be surprised if that would. So I think that's what you're going to see. I think you're going to see a Guile Road article for the May town meeting as well, because you just got to go down these two tracks and see which one the residents and the members of town meeting want to go with.
Right, so maybe come in and buy the building for $12 million.
Exactly. We're in a competitive situation, right? So we're trying to move with speed. We're trying to move like the private sector moves as best we can.
And I think that Judy has her hand raised as well on the Zoom.
Hi, thank you, Emily. I have a question that doesn't go to the actual building at Fontbonne, but it seems to me that the empty space that is going to be created in the existing schools, because we have new space, will also increase the school budget, because those rooms are not going to sit empty. They're going to be occupied by students that need to be also occupied by adult staffing. So that would increase the number of staffing and increase the school budget. Would that be correct?
Go ahead, go first.
Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, there's a number of students that are sent out of district because we don't have space for them. So I think the intent of opening up that space, there's going to be a hierarchy of who gets it, once it becomes open. Bringing students back into the district with their peers, I think, is a high priority, along with the associated costs with that. They're cognizant of the costs associated with it. If we have the space, can pull them back in and bring them back with their peers, I think that's one of the higher priorities. So cost-wise, as I mentioned, it's over $5 million annually that they're spending on that. So, I think by bringing that in, it will reduce that cost. It totally won't go away. But the other part that comes in too is if you create enough space that's in there and other students in other districts need those services and come here, it now becomes a revenue stream.
So, to be clear, the opened up space is more for SPED programs than regular classrooms?
It will probably be both, but let me just say a couple of things about, we're going to be coming in, the school committee is coming in about their budget, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And Director of Special Ed, Sue Maselli, will be joining us. She can tell you in all the detail that's necessary about the needs of the different students. But what's happening just in the last few weeks when our finance subcommittee, and some of you have been at those meetings with us, Sue has come in a couple of times and said, this position was going to be for the fiscal 24 request, but we have to hire that person now because a student has moved into the district and needs this service and that service and this service. Our special ed population is growing significantly and their needs have to be met by law. We don't have a choice. So already the school psychologist that was in the budget for fiscal year 24 has to be hired now. There was a nurse that had to be hired because she has to be with the student who has some kind of critical medical issues. and have to be with that student at all times during the school day, she had to be hired now. So our budget changes like weekly. We go in and we'll get an update and say, oh, by the way, this has happened since we last met last week. So I do think that Sue Maselli wants to use some of those classrooms at the Cunningham Collicott site that will be freed up when, if and when this program goes forward to the Fontbonne site. There's a medical model program that she wants to do, and that again, because we can bring students out of district placements to their home district, it will be a cost savings because some of the tuitions and the transportations are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And so I think she's trying to build some programs back into the district to bring down our out-of-district placements.
And just one other note too, to Judy's point of those existing spaces, as I showed in the presentation, like there are displaced classrooms for art, music, and stuff like that. Those kids already exist. They'd just be moving their guitars, keyboards, stuff like that, back to rooms where they essentially belong.
So just as a
okay, so the space will be used for what we have existing and space constraints, as you mentioned, extracurriculars like music and art. And then the remaining space will be to bring our hometown SPED students back into our own hometown school setting. And I think I got confused when you were saying out of district. So we're not going to actually, just to clarify, not taking students from other towns into our town, we're just bringing our own students back to our own town?
Currently, yes.
Yes, thank you.
I just want to say something positive. So right before Christmas, a 5th grade student, when we have site council presentations at school committee, and Glover School came in, and the principal, Karen McDevitt, had 6 fifth grade students write a persuasive essay to members of the school committee, and each student picked one member of the school committee. And the young boy that wrote to me about why he loves Glover and what makes Glover special, he was terrific, and he invited me in for a tour. So I called Karen and said, maybe I could come in before the holiday break. And this young man gave me a tour of Glover. Now, my son went to Glover, and I've been to Glover many times, but I let him give me a tour like I was my rookie time there. And again, I was looking at the students were fabulous. They were smiling at me and greeting me, and who are you? And I went in to visit a kindergarten classroom because I know the teacher, and they were asking me if I knew their mother, and they were just full of enthusiasm, and the learning that was going on there and the smiles that were going on there were just really warmed my heart. But I certainly noticed how crowded everything was, and I noticed the hallways and the students meeting in the hallways with teachers, and having been very involved in the first school building project, it kind of broke my heart to see the overcrowding. But I certainly think the spirit of the school was in full measure that day. It was a really lovely time to spend with the student and the group at Glover. So there you go.
So Sean, I have a question.
Yeah.
So we talked about this project, which shorter time, assuming things were right.
Yep.
The timeline is shorter, it immediately addresses the needs of the elementary school, because parallel path, Guile Road, until that point. But I guess the question is there, if the two were options, like, are we addressing only part of our problem by doing Fontbonne versus if Guile Road were to go through, are we longer timeline, but are we ultimately addressing all of the issues and not putting something on the back burner to deal with in another 2 or 3 years or whenever that situation explodes? Because to Kristen's point, they're like, her daughter's in the biggest class, and I remember that was the class when my kids were at Glover, and that grade, they're moving forward, so that group isn't getting smaller. To your point, there is, I know the 6th grade and the 9th grade is the big the time when all the, when kids go to the private schools. But then we have that added layer now of, I don't know, 740Bs coming in with, I don't know how many hundreds of units. So 600, which is crazy. So I guess the question is, it seems like decisions are going to have to be made sooner, but are we just putting off like, ideally, if Guile Road were an option and you guys had to say Guile Road or Fonfon, could you say that? Like, would you, I mean, I don't mean to put you on the hot seat, but it's, I guess that's the question, because I don't, like, are we spending money? And that might, even if Guile Road were feasible, that might take something off because things are growing anyway. I guess they're both, it seemed like Guile Road, if the legal issues were behind it, that is addressing everything, because you're pulling things, you're moving, you're changing up the grade scenarios, which I think addressed other concerns that people had. So I think this is, obviously this is worth pursuing. I mean, to see what it's worth, but I guess that's my question at the end of the day.
So the reason I was fidgeting in my chair, moving around is,
No,
I knew this question was coming. It's a great question. It's probably the toughest one I have, and I practice an answer, and every time it's different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and I knew at some point I was just going to wing it. And essentially, what it is for me, it's bringing back horror stories of doing multivariate calculus in college, where there's so many inputs, so many variables.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. Originally, the intent was to have Gow Road in this option at this town meeting, right? The survey work we were doing with BSC Group didn't hit the timeline that we needed to get the approvals to put both of them on, right? My concern with that is the Gow Road option, even when we looked at it last May, I was confident it would pass, right? But if there's another option out there, for example, Fonfon, I think some of that support, that middle support might erode.
Yeah.
And so because of that, if it's the engineer may come out, if it's a Boolean thing where it's an and, we're doing this or an or, we're doing this or this on the ballot, I think they kill each other. You know what I mean? I think one wouldn't pass because somebody wants the other one, and then the other one wouldn't pass because the other one, and then we've got nothing.
Right.
It's too far. So my take right now is having these staggered as they are right now lines them up, in my opinion, properly. We're taking Fonfon, we're running with that because for me it's an attainable option right now. That I'm looking at the opportunity to purchase this type of property, this type of land in the town is very rare. So even if, for example, if we bought it and it didn't work out for a school, but it worked out for something else, and it doesn't become another project in the town, I think it's worth doing. So that's what we're trying to work out. As Mrs. Zulus, talked about, Gow Road, because there are a number of hurdles to get to a fully funded project on this, we have to keep Gow Road on the books. Right. So, for example, if this failed, and then we come back in May, we can't be blamed for doing something that make the other option fail. We're not doing that.
Right.
Our end is to push this. In regards to options, I put it out there for everybody. Everybody can digest it how they feel. The Gow Road option, it addressed everything. High school, middle school, elementary school, everything all the way through. It's a higher dollar value. It's a longer timeline, right? But it does that. Fonfon, when we look at it, is a shorter timeline, lower construction cost. It addresses a percentage of what we're looking at the elementary school. And basically what it does is it solves a component of it. Gow Road would still be there for another project later on. If it's, if Gow Road totally went away or something like that, it'd be a different way to view the equation.
When would you look at Pierce and that elementary space study that was conducted, adding on to Pierce?
So
Once Fonfon goes through, or how would that work?
Yeah, so similar to what you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain, Yeah, and there's a certain appetite in the town, I know, financially to take on a certain amount of construction. So for me, it wouldn't be till after.
Okay, after it's completed. So like after 2 to 3 years looking at.
So would you sign a purchase and sales agreement prior to town meeting or after town meeting? Sorry.
Thanks, Betty. So the goal, I think the goal of us who are trying to negotiate this is to sign a PS if we can get agreement as soon as possible, subject to town meeting and subject to the voting.
Okay, so that would be a caveat on the.
Absolutely, same as what we did with the fire station.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if we can get there,
Yeah.
you know, as soon as we get it, you'll have it. But, you know.
And what's your sense?
No sense, no sense. Just working it, just working it.
I mean, is there appetite for other people that want that property, or, you know?
I don't know that it's helpful to get into that on TV,
Okay,
but
sorry.
we're working it.
Yeah.
We're working, Nick's working it, and we're just working it.
Great, thank you.
And when you showed that building, it was only that section, correct? Like it wasn't, was it the whole, like that annex, like?
No, the entire building.
That left, yeah,
It's
okay.
it's
Yeah.
the entire building.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just highlighted that annex because I had pictures of that portion.
Okay.
If you need me to pull it up.
No,
I can
I'm
pull it up.
good.
I just have a
Yes,
quick
sir.
question for you, I hope I get this right.
Yeah.
Mentioned, and I've said on town meeting as well, there's a ton of 40Bs on the books and planning going through the system now, 600 units you referenced there. Have you done a study on what that impact's gonna be on the classrooms that are already overburdened? And the concern, the question would be, is Fontbonne a Band-Aid for a larger problem we're gonna have? Is that going to be addressed? And the second part of that question is, have you looked at other towns, for instance, Needham, which is at 10% with a 40B today, and how their 40Bs impact their schools as well?
Yeah, and I haven't dove into other towns for their 40Bs. I have worked with the town planner, so the actual number that he gave me was roughly a little over 700. And when I look at that, my next question is how many 2 and 3 bedrooms? Because 1-bedroom units, really, you're not expecting any kids. So in NESDEC, who does our enrollment projections, that's what they take into account, and they scale it differently for a 3-bedroom unit compared to a 1-bedroom unit. So out of that 700, it was about half. So about 350 2 and 3-bedroom units are coming on. So, you know, when you start looking at that, again, NESDEC doesn't take that into account because it's not permitted. So we can look at that and just, you know, throw 50% at it, you know, of that 350. And for these things, they're all guesses at this point, as you can tell. As those start coming on, yeah, it's you know, it's part of why I bring up that census thing there. The town is growing rapidly, and it's a number of issues that we can have. Schools are one component of it that unpassed.
And if I could ask Steve, you know, this, as Sean mentioned, Fontbonne solves a significant percentage of the problem, doesn't solve the whole problem. But if we wait longer, the problem gets bigger, and we haven't even addressed a part of the problem, right? And then we may lose out on an option to solve at least a large percentage of the problem. So it's, as Sean mentioned, you know, you're going through different calculus here of, okay, do we want to try to solve the whole problem, and it's going to take 5 or 6 years or 7 years, and then is the problem different, right? So I think, I mean, the way I look at it is, we have a problem that we're trying to solve that's in front of us right now. We have speculation about what else might be out there, but we gotta solve a percentage of it, you know. Otherwise, we may lose out, and then we're nowhere.
The one other thing that I'd like to point out too is, you know, Gow Road, like I said, isn't going away. And then in the future, if we wanted to do Gow Road, the previous proposal we were doing was a middle school with a preschool option, right, the preschool wing. We wouldn't do the preschool wing. It would be a smaller project on Gow Road of just the middle school that way because we have an existing preschool. So
The way I visualize it, it's kind of like putting a golf ball through a garden hose. You're going to stick a large population in that unit. It's going to continue to expand as it moves out into the other schools that we saw. I mean, that was disturbing, seeing poor kids sitting on the ground. That just bothered me. But,
yep.
so I think it's great. You guys are doing some great work here.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
And this might be more towards Mr. Zulus and the select board and to town administrator. Understand that we're moving like super fast here. So we're talking about negotiating a purchase and sale agreement in real time. I'm sure that you're privy to negotiations that you can't share with us. The article is essentially an authorization. There's not a specific ask. However, in the recommendation, there's some discussion of money, and it's appropriate that we should talk about the bottom line. As in right now, we're dealing with ballpark figures, 8 million, 9 million. Do you have a recommendation to us in our conversations and our deliberations here? How should we handle the fact that there's not a specific ask here? Because let's just say it was the sense of the warrant committee, say, to approve, and we pick a number out of a hat, but then it turns out that you need more than that. This is a problem.
Do they come back, or do they?
So
the property was listed at 8.5. We have an appraisal going on to see what we think the property is worth.
Because one thing we could do is be silent on it and not put a number in. And then, War Committee gets potentially accused of writing a blank check, right? Not doing the due diligence. But right now, we're talking about terms that we don't have right now.
What's your deadline?
We have to have comments in by the 20th.
Give us a chance, and we'll see if we can get something done before then. Look, we're trying to get it done. We've had the idea of the mid-January, okay? So we're trying to get it done, but we haven't yet. So by the 20th, maybe.
Right. Because the warrant committee would have to meet again too. So we only have so many. Okay. But that's something that we can discuss at such time as we choose to have a discussion.
So the select board's meeting on the 18th.
Yep.
So if you all met after that, maybe in a perfect world, we'd have more information, right? And then the select board may have taken action on the 18th, if we have something to take action. And then you'll have more clarity on what the ask is. I think that's fair.
Right.
So we won't vote today?
Well, that's something we can discuss, right? It's something that we can discuss.
And I think Judy has her hand up.
Judy has her hand up.
I hate to divert from Dave's very, very important point here. But something came to my mind about the pre-K enrollment. Are all the needs met for the students in this town? In other words, is anyone turned away from these programs because they're too full? Or anyone in town that needs to use these programs, they're accommodated? With these numbers that we have of 489 pre-K and K students. Has anyone been turned away because we're full?
So, yeah, just clarification. Clarification. You're just asking about preschool, pre-K, or you're asking for all grade levels?
No, just these programs, because my understanding, and I should be corrected if I haven't understood correctly, is that the state of Massachusetts does not mandate that municipalities provide a pre-K program in their municipality as part of their school offering and budgets. So it goes to my question, are we meeting all the needs of the people that want this program? Or are there some, because of space constraints, we don't take everyone in that wants it?
Now, I'll do my best to answer that.
I probably asked this
Are
question,
you
so.
adding any additional students from the pre-K program with the addition of Hong? I guess would be,
I'm hearing different things, so
well,
that's the
she's
question.
asking if you're meeting all the needs, and not everybody can apply to the pre-K program, because it's a lottery, Judy, so there, you only take a certain amount of students for the pre-K.
Yeah, the simple answer for pre-K is capped.
It's
So-
capped, yeah.
Correct.
So you have a
Special
set
needs
number for
students.
pre-K, we apply by lottery to see if we can secure one of those spots.
Can I just ask though, it's not purely lottery, there is prioritization for, based on income and special education needs, right?
I believe, I'm
not
talking-
sure.
Yeah, I'm talking as a parent that had my daughter in pre-K last year, and she had special needs, so like, I understand that component. I'm not speaking on behalf of the school committee, I'm just giving.
I would just say from going through the lottery, I believe that when you enter the lottery, and it really does feel like a lottery, because my older child, like sometimes you're not even put on the wait list because so many people enter and there are so few spots. But I think you're told up front that they do prioritize students based on special education needs. And I think there was something about income as well.
But the only thing too is like, if you're not special ed, you have to pay for it as much as you'd have to pay for any other preschool option. So, I mean, you could conceivably provide more spots, but it's not like you're getting a free spot. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of, you're in the district versus in the school versus not, so I would just question if that's.
Yeah, it's another variable too for the future, because someone raised the question of universal pre-K, and if the Commonwealth adopts universal pre-K, that changes the calculus again. Again, not something we can really project, but that could change the calculus in the future as well.
So, to follow up, if it's okay, we're not mandated by state law to offer these programs in this town. We chose to, but we're limiting the numbers because of budgetary matters.
We're
Yeah,
mandated to offer,
let's-
we're mandated to offer to kids in special education. You have to offer pre-K to kids in special ed starting at the age of 3 and a half. And beyond that, I think because we offer peer students, we round it out, but we're not obligated to offer it to everybody.
That's right.
And there is a lot of value that comes from having that model.
Yeah,
Of
oh yeah,
having
yeah.
Yeah. So
Just
it's-
more the matter of like, what are you mandated?
Yeah, so yeah, part of it is mandated.
Right.
And yeah, but there.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, fellow members and our guest. Thank you.
For the mandated piece, if we weren't able to provide that, which again, I think it's like the lottery kind of rounds that out, and there's that added value. But if we didn't have the capacity to provide that, that would be adding to that 5 million or so that we're paying to send people elsewhere, right?
Correct.
Yeah, would have to. So we'd be
Yeah,
spending
legally.
more if we cut the pre-K programs. I mean, I would say, I know there are limitations and like there are students who have to go elsewhere. Like there's the cost, but there's also, I think, the like moral responsibility that students should be able to be educated in their town. So I think there's like the piece of, we reduce those costs of sending people out, but there's other reasons too for that component.
Any other questions? Okay, well, Jay, your hand. You have a question?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to echo some of the concerns I heard from the other members of the committee about, this versus the Guile Road option. It seemed like there was sort of a well thought out, well planned Guile Road option, which was approved by multiple committees in the town, including the previous iteration of this committee. It would not only solve all our It would not only solve our problem.
He has the floor. He has the floor.
We didn't.
Sorry. What's up?
Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, it would not only solve our space problems, but also give us a big benefit of the middle school right next to the high school, having a campus there. And it would be a new building. I walked around the Fontbonne convent this weekend, and among other things, it's hideous. But sorry, to put a point on my question, I'm concerned that we had a well thought out plan, and now we're jumping into this shiny new thing, and I'm not even sure what we're getting. Like, do we know? Has this building been inspected for things like lead paint and asbestos? And do we even know how many classrooms would be there? I'm not sure if we figured that out. There was talk earlier about, if we have extra space, we can take in, rehome our special education children. If we don't, but it was said in a way that left me wondering: do we know how much space we have or not? This is the kind of things I would want to know before saying yes, let's spend $8 million on this. Thank you.
No problem. So to respond, a couple of your points, Jay, is the inspections for hazardous materials and stuff like that have not been done. Our committee doesn't have that as a resource. With the intent of, when we talk about level 3 alteration, for lack of a better word, it is a level up. So if there are hazardous materials there, they would be removed as part of that project we'd be doing. I think the second question you asked was for number of classrooms. The number of classrooms we'll be putting in there are 26. The breakdown of those classrooms would be 19 kindergarten, 7 preschool. The space that you were referencing that would be creating would be for lack of a better word, abandoned space as we move those programs out from the existing elementary schools. And we'd be utilizing that to basically reallocate previously displaced music, art rooms, and students that are out of district.
So the 19 and the 7 classrooms are based on predictions of growth in pre-K and K?
Good question. They're not. They're actually current today of what we have. So we're not building anything for expansion in the future. We'd be building just for what we have now. Part of the reason for that is space is limited there. Potentially, most likely with the building, we'll have to add on to it or expand it because the existing 45,000 square feet wouldn't be large enough to house that education program.
So I guess follow-up question to that would be, Ms. White talking about the growth of special ed, and that's the one area where we are, that's the entry point for a lot of kids coming out of early intervention, and that's where the numbers are first going to hit. So if we're already seeing a growth from, we're now at 20%, are we not, is there a way to think about that so that we're accounting for potential growth with that? It's concerning if those are the numbers coming in, especially, I know we can't make these guesses, but I would assume there are probably a number of younger families that will be coming in with these new developments. So are we spending the money not just solving today? Are there things that we could do to look at that so that we're accounting for possible growth of that K and pre-K?
Yeah, the overarching answer to almost all these questions are we need more space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Bonbon provides that as an option at a shorter term. Gower Road is still an option for future, that if we needed to build out. My goal as a joke is not to be on a school building committee for the next 20 years until I retire. I'd like to at some point get back to my life. So part of this is, I'd like to complete Fontbonne or project, and if it's Fontbonne, turn over, for lack of a better word, a playbook to the next school building committee of, here's all the work we did up to this point. When we started, we didn't get a playbook. We just started from scratch. We spent a couple of years figuring ourselves out, working our way, figuring out what committees we have to meet with. And part of my goal is kind of one of my ways to develop that and leave that there for the next school year, which I assume would be needed.
I was just going to say, I think it's fair to say that Fontbonne solves the elementary problem that we have today. Guile would solve the elementary problem that we have today and the middle school problem that we have today. Neither project projects out into the future. I think that's fair to say.
Right, I guess so my question though is we're looking at, and I'm not saying that I disagree with them, I guess I'm just thinking a lot of this is showing projections. We're talking about how quickly the town is growing. Part of the reason we are where we are today is maybe there weren't those same projections when the previous buildings were built. So I just want to make sure as we're talking about this that we're not doing the exact same thing, which is none of us have a crystal ball, but we're seeing this. So are we building for this or are we building for today? And I guess.
Can I ask a question? When we did the school building project and we have the substantial funding, isn't there some requirement about you can't build for 30% more projections? You can only build, wait.
That's exactly right. If we're under the school building authority. Now, if we're not under the school building authority, we could do whatever we want as a town.
But we'd probably like to get some money from the school building authority.
Go ahead.
I'll touch on that one.
Go
So
ahead.
we were just recently made aware we were not selected again.
What do you have to do to be selected?
Easy.
I had a joke response I will not do. It's difficult. I mean, the optics of it for this town, and this is kind of where my joke was going, but on a serious point, the substantial funding we got on the last school building thing, I think weighs in heavily on the way they're allocating money right now. The Mass School Building Authority derives all their funding from, I think, the state sales tax as a percentage of that. There are a number of larger, more needy, for lack of a better word, construction projects that are coming out that are on their radar. And you know, some of, as everyone knows with construction right now, numbers are through the roof. And you know, I think they're concerned that there's a number of very large projects that are coming. Couple that with the reimbursement rate we got at our last project, and I think that weighs against this. So my goal, as I was doing this, part of my goal was, you know, get a site, come up with a project, and then talk about why we should not be going with MSBA. Mainly because it ties us into a very long timeline. Feasibility study, concepts, all this stuff, all these boxes we have to check to get to kind of where we are today. So we can save all that time and money, do the project a lot faster, forego whatever small reimbursement we get nowhere near the amount we were getting before.
Right.
And by solving it faster, it offsets that reimbursement that we were getting.
Steve?
And by the way, the Warrant Committee did not approve the Guile Road switch. We voted 3 times or 4 times, and we voted the middle, and so we never voted for it. So just to make that clear to everybody that wasn't on the committee last year, so.
I think we have to separate Guile right now.
Right.
Because this is like too much Guile talk and without,
And then,
to me, I mean, I think this is what's on the table and working, you know, because there's obviously, you can develop Guile, you could develop on the schools, you could develop on the elementary schools, that stuff, the studies are there, that will be addressed in the foreseeable future.
Can we add on to the Fontbonne convent, go up?
that's part of the feasibility study that we're looking at. At some point, we are gonna have to add on to it vertically, horizontally, you know. We're looking at that stuff now. With the wetlands there behind it, it creates an option that we can't really expand down there. So then we're limited by the essentially boundaries of the property at that point. So for us, I can play architect all day, but until we bring the pros in, I don't want to show anything that I think is conceptual. Yes, sir.
Just to speak to what happened in last year's Warrant Committee too, was, you know, there was a big debate about Guile and going forward with it. And obviously the Warrant Committee was heavily divided on it. It was controversial, but what was said by those who opposed Guile, probably to man or woman, was everyone thought that there was a need for a school, but that that was not the right place to put it. But they said we should be looking for various other land opportunities. And they asked about this place and that place and that place. And so this seems to me like a perfect fit for that land opportunity. That's just what I think to say.
Do we have any more questions for our guests? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Would we like to have a discussion?
I mean, I just would say that no matter how you slice and dice it, it's an investment. Even let's say we build the school on it, it's still for the town to own it. Even if you sold it, would still make money off of it.
Yes, we should just.
Okay.
I think that's a great point, and I think the other thing is, like, this isn't an unlimited, like, if we don't do this now, it's gone, so.
There's not a lot of land in town, and we should be capitalizing on it, or buildings.
No, I think if I could, I think this is sort of refreshing for me. I think, as some of you have already said, you know, the purchase of land and the lands in a town that doesn't have any, I think is really forward thinking by the select board and others and the school building committee, because it's not around. And like you just said, you know, we lose out by not getting it. And I hope the town will look at this perhaps in other ways.
Yeah.
Developing of like affordable housing, like jump on this so we control, and it's not a developer from Texas. I think it's a really good idea. You know, I am concerned, I kind of came to this meeting thinking Guile Road, this, and everything else that we're looking at down the road, you know, the fire stations, MDT communities. I mean, it's like, so we have to be very mindful. I mean, these are huge projects, but I mean, as my comment, I like this. I think it's something the board should really consider. And of course, the town meeting's got to figure it out, but, you know, I'm for this as it stands right now.
There's not a lot of opportunity.
I think the timeline, I think that's, you know, being able to address something soon is huge, and being able to pull out, you know, it's being able to pull out and have space in the other buildings as well.
Yeah, I think
Which
that's-
makes, I mean, it's sort of, you're being able to address two things.
There are always going to be those concerns about construction. I mean, the infrastructure. I mean, Center Street's a mess. You know, like, you know, that intersection. You know, I mean, I don't want to, you know, because I think the good outweighs here from my shoes.
Judy has her hand up.
Dave, you brought up a great point about blank checks, and I was hoping that you could explain our timeline with the select board.
Yes, thanks, Judy. So what's happening, like our timeline is such as this, is my understanding, is this P&S, purchase and sale agreement, is being negotiated now in real time. When Mr. O'Rourke put up the chronology and you see December, I'm like, is that 2022? Because these things have been going on for so long. Like, there was a couple weeks ago with holidays right in there. We all know how that goes. You know, so, I mean, I wrote it down. I think Mr. O'Rourke said we're running with it. We are running with it. Now, normally, so some of our deadlines that we have are almost self-imposed. Where we're at right now is that we, the Warrant Committee, we have 3 scheduled meetings before our comments are due on the 20th. On the 11th, we're going to address the treasurer, and then we'd scheduled a backup for the 18th, which is the same time as the select board. Now, they may have a number on the 18th. They may not. We don't know. They would like to. Part of the concern is that, you know, we're not the negotiators. if we pick a number, this could be problematic. That could shape the negotiations. That we could come in too low, and then right? So one of the things for us to think about is, under these circumstances that we don't often find ourselves in, hopefully, where this is a decision that's being made in real time. One of the things that we could do is we could proceed with a vote at this time, because ultimately what happens is it does have to go to the town. The town decides. So one thing we could choose to do is to proceed, knowing the range, to authorize the sale to some degree. It is a blank check.
Are they not getting first right of refusal, Milton, like the town, for the purchase?
Mr. Milano, can you help us with that?
Sure, the town would be executing a purchase and sale, so
No, I
would be
know,
a right
but-
of first refusal would be, we would be the purchasing party.
Yeah, but do we have first rights on it? Okay,
We do not possess any rights on the property today. Library College does have rights.
first
for
to
a
it,
first
but, and they've already talked to talked to them about.
I think that's executive session discussion.
I was just curious if because that's usually happens within, when they were talking about the Canton, they were saying that Canton, the town had the first right of refusal on that Reebok space. I'm just curious if we have any.
We do not, the town does not possess any rights on this property as is. There is an entity, library, that has rights over it,
Yeah.
which may or may not be exercised, which in terms of legally, I don't know what triggers what with that, but the town does not possess those rights. So we have to reach an agreement with Fontbonne on our own.
But if they, I say this because are we going through this process and they might want to buy it and we're
It's certainly a factor that is out there that we're hopeful wouldn't happen, but it's an eventuality. It's something that, as we get more news, we would obviously share that as things progress.
Or are they gonna let us outbid them and then and they're going for the higher money?
Well, I think that goes to what you said, Dave, about the not wanting to put something down that could shape negotiations, because you mentioned going too low, but what if we went too high?
Right.
That wouldn't be
I was just
good.
curious where we were in the pecking order.
Yeah.
I think with Canton, I was just gonna say, I think that was a lease, so that was a short term. So I got the sense that with I keep saying Reebok, but I think it's .32 now. That's probably just from they want to have a good relationship with the town they're in.
Mm-hmm.
So because they're not selling it, they're just leasing it out.
Because all appropriations of this nature have to be approved by town meeting. So that number is going to have to be arrived at and voted on. When we go to the special, they're going to, one would hope that we would have the P&S, we'd know what we're talking about, and then the town, they have their say. So we as the Warrant Committee, this is just a question that I have for us now, is sort of our comfort zone. Do we proceed now? Do we ask for more time with the uncertainty of, are we going to get a number? Okay? That's a question that I have for you.
Could we put escalation clause in?
Do we have any lawyers here? What's
I'm
that?
just saying that would give you the responsibility to outbid the top price, just so, that's.
But why wouldn't we just give a blank check?
Well, no, I'm just saying that, let's say if they put a 8.6, we would have the escalation
No,
clause.
I know,
But then we don't
I'm
really
not-
want them to know what they're
Yeah,
negotiating
exactly. I don't
against
think-
either.
No, we wouldn't, we would just be going the higher
Yeah,
of
but
the.
if we approve it right now, we're basically telling.
No, I know, I'm just
Fontbonne-
saying, but we, I'm just giving an option for,
We should wait. I don't feel comfortable voting on something that I don't know what I'm voting for.
Yeah, I think our recommendation comes with a lot of weight, and having a number,
I don't know if we need to.
yeah.
But I'm
No,
just
I
saying.
know, but if we say yes, and then that goes to town meeting, and I'm open to hearing all sides of it, but just, I think that we have to take into consideration. If we recommend yes without having a dollar amount, and it's $100 million, and we said
Yeah.
yes to it, like, that's all I'm saying, like,
comfortable
just
with
playing like devil's advocate, I think,
I'll go
it's
the
been-
other way.
No, I know, no, it's
Can I
been
just
very-
talk the other way real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah.
So they're asking 8.5 million.
Yep.
So we kind of can set that, unless Labouré is going to come in, right? But it doesn't seem like there's anyone else. So if we're comfortable with 8.5, like, I don't know. I mean, again, we've all said this is land. We all think time is of the essence. We all think, like, at the end of the day, we have to trust our representatives who are here, negotiating on our behalf. They don't want to pay $100 million.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
giving them a blank check for $100 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I know they're gonna get voted out if they come in with $100 million. So I would vote for time being of the essence, because just because of the last year and all the time we spent debating, and I swear to you, everyone, you were there, everyone was like, we need a school. And if we can find a piece of land, if we can find anyone to sell us a piece of land, we should buy it. That was the whole argument. And we have that opportunity. Why are we not doing this?
But us approving the warrant tonight without having a number, why not wait for 2 weeks? So whenever you think we're gonna have a number.
I don't know, can we hear from them and hear if having an authority with blank helps you versus waiting for a number?
So the warrant committee's recommendation is certainly that, it is a recommendation. So the select board, will be negotiating a PNS, and it brings it to the warrant committee for a recommendation. So even if, for example, the warrant committee said $3 million, the select board's, still negotiating a deal at $8 million, it would come back to the warrant committee to see if where your recommendation was. So I think in terms of process here, it wouldn't affect what our process would be. We will share with you the number as soon as it is final and public.
Okay, so we
And
don't
so
have
it's,
to do it then.
yeah, so I think, we have, just in terms of kind of what's been happening in the background, we have provided a proposal, an offer to them, and we've told them that the select board is meeting tomorrow night, and one of their agenda items is this, an executive session. So if they get back to us before tomorrow night, maybe we can push this one step closer to getting done, and maybe that happens before the 18th. Maybe it doesn't happen before the select board meets again on the 18th, but there are 2 meetings. There's one meeting tomorrow night, then again a meeting on the 18th. So, as soon as we get there, we'll be sharing that information. So it's really up to what the warrant committee feels is appropriate. At the end of the day, the town meeting vote will have to include what the figure is. It'll reference the purchase and sale agreement. So I think all those components will be locked in. It's just a question of what date they'll be locked in at. And hopefully it's
What date
sooner
do
rather
you
than
have
later.
to have it by then?
Really, the drop dead deadline is February 13th, but
Okay.
in ideal worlds, we would have it to you before then, so you have the opportunity to write a comment that goes in the warrant rather than in something that says the warrant committee didn't have the materials or information to provide a recommendation, in which case we would include something for town meeting members at a later date. Obviously, we would rather have that in one mailing that everybody gets and it's all in one place, but that's always an eventuality that could happen.
I think if the agreement substantially changed our perspective, hasn't there been moments where we've considered revoting, like reopening a vote? So, I mean, like JJ, I trust that our elected representatives would not be offering $100 million, and that's not something that would ever be considered. If that happened, that would change my perspective, but I think it's something that we could safely say wouldn't, and that there is a mechanism if something unreasonable were to happen. I mean, I think logistically there are reasons for moving things forward from like the comment perspective. So I think I would agree with JJ on that. That
I
there's
mean, honestly, I'm kind of, based on what you said, to me, I don't really care about the logistics, I just care about being able to, so, I don't really, I don't know. I mean, I know it must make your life harder or someone else's. I don't
well,
know.
now it would be Karen's more so. But I mean, I think the presentation also, like, while the price could be different, the some of the costs that were shared were based on lists, just as a comparison point. So that was helpful for me.
Would the costs that we're talking about include the feasibility, the cost comparison? Would the costs that we'd be talking about, would they include estimates from the feasibility study? Would anything come out of that, or would we simply be, all we're talking about is the purchase price, correct?
The only thing you're talking about is the purchase price.
That was 18.5 for the feasibility study, is that what you said?
18,500 that's being funded by the school committee.
Yeah. And one quick question for you, Nick, too, is that if you're meeting tomorrow executive session, you review the number to 8.5 and come back with a recommendation, couldn't we review that in our next meeting later this week, once we have more intel? I mean, you guys can do more G2 then when you're done, right?
Yeah, we should have more information by Wednesday. I don't know what stage we'll be at. We could be in status quo. We're still waiting for a response from Fontbonne. We could be at a place where the select board went back with a revised offer. That's just kind of what the movable is. I don't know how public will be. By Wednesday, we'll certainly have more information, hopefully, than we do today. And that carries through to next Wednesday as well, as the goal is to keep trying to knock this out as we progress here. But it's, we're one willing party. There's somebody else that has to play ball.
You can still pursue P&S and then come back for approval for the final dollar amount from the warrant to go to town?
Yes.
So this wouldn't stop you at all, you can still keep going?
No, and yeah, that's right. We would, the goal is to get this done by mid-January, but we'll work to keep getting it done until February if that's what it takes.
What did it gain us by voting tonight versus another night?
There's one thing I know.
I mean, the only
Comments? Could I speak to one thing? It
Emily.
looks like we have 100% attendance tonight. So one thing I would say is that everyone is here, and that's not often the case. So that's one benefit that stands out to me, that we're all able to vote tonight. And even if people intend to be here on Wednesday, something could come up. So that's something I just wanted to know.
So the one thing that we would get would be finality, right? If we thought that we might want to kick the issue over to another time, such as Wednesday, I'd want to vote on that first so that people don't vote against the project because they wanted to have it heard later. You see what I mean? So that if we voted, we voted for that, and we didn't have people vote no to the project because they wanted it heard on Wednesday. So I would want to, sort of do housekeeping on that first, and then see where we're at.
Jay has his hand raised.
Jay.
Yeah, I'd like to, we've been talking the past few minutes about the money part. I would like to hear other people's thoughts, not just the merits of this period, because I'll admit, I don't know how I'm voting. I'm very torn. Because, the school building committee didn't come to us and say, the warrant committee, choose between Fontbonne and Giles. But to at least a small degree, that's what we're being asked. And I'm uncomfortable with going with, I think most people would agree, especially if you put aside the issues with Giles' location, I think most people would agree that this is an inferior option, that a brand new high-tech middle school is better than taking an old ugly building and sticking our kindergartners in. Now, just because that's, but a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So I'm very torn with saying we'll go for the inferior option, but on the other hand, yeah, buying land is good, and reducing overcrowding, perhaps, he said not 6 months from now, but I don't know, could it be a year and a half from now? That's good too. Not having to build temporary buildings is good. Maybe I'm not saying anything constructive, but I'm very torn. I've mostly been hearing positive comments on the merits, so if I'm the only one who's torn, that's fine, but I'd like more discussion on the merits.
I know Henny's hand is raised as well.
Oh, thank you. And Jay, I appreciate your comment and everyone's discussion tonight. On the earlier point that Emily made about all of us being here, I think that is significant, and I think it's important for us to consider. We've had a really good discussion. We've heard a lot. Sometimes it's a different feeling. The next night we have different stuff to eat for dinner. It just feels different. I would hate to rehash 2 hours of discussion simply because we kicked the can. The second point is, Jay, on the merits of it, I think the merits have been well documented to me. One, we know that the school, in 5 years, if we kick the can in 2 years, we'll pay more to buy space in the future than if we buy it now. It's only going to get more expensive, right? And so if something comes up, we all, as JJ pointed out, we've all agreed that we were begging, trying to find land anywhere when we were looking for different parcels, and we know how hard this is. So I think there's something here. I do think that there is merit to what Mr. Zula said maybe about an hour ago about let these 2 proposals continue. I do think there's something here at the convent, and as I think someone else made the point earlier, that we haven't necessarily solved an overcrowding issue. I'm not debating whether there's an overcrowding issue or not. I think that's a different discussion. But if you look at the numbers and the projections that we've seen, there is a real concern that we would repeat history and not produce a plan that is going to sustain the test of time. So what better way to do that? This is a very unusual thing, to have 2 parcels of land that we can consider. I think we're foolish not to allow the town to have the chance to vote on these 2 parcels. That's really what's at stake here. Do we give the opportunity and support these 2 going forward? I think options is good here. So on the merits of the proposal, the merits of the land, on the opportunity on this, I don't know how we can say no. If we say we're concerned about a blank check, I understand, I agree with that. But just on the merits of the opportunity for us, this is unprecedented and something we should really look to take advantage of.
I think the other thing I was going to add is when you were talking about the price tag is we would be looking at $7 to $8 million to pay for the modular units, and that's just sunk cost. It's not like we're getting anything for that $7 to $8 million. It's just. So, I think that's it's you think about the cost, the comparison, but I would agree with Henny's comments.
And I think with the Guile Road, I mean, I do think that ultimately, like, we might end up in a place where we need both, but Guile Road is there, and this won't be if the town doesn't act. And I think, Amanda, to your comment about the modular classrooms, I worked previously in a different state, in a different district, where there was heavy use of modular classrooms, and it's kind of hard to quantify, but there were times when the use of what was supposed to be temporary became permanent, and there was a really visible impact on students when you're putting them in temporary units, often used well beyond the amount of time they're really intended for. It says something to students. I think it impacts their experience and how they feel about school. And it's a negative impact. So I think if there's a feasible way of avoiding going down that route, it's important to try to take it.
I'll say it again, I think we just should wait a couple of weeks to find out what the dollar's gonna be before we vote on it. So I'm just not comfortable voting on something that's an open situation where who knows what it's gonna be. So, I know we're all here tonight, but, so that's my thoughts, but I'll fold if everybody else wants to go for it, so.
All right, it's getting late. We've had some discussion. Do we feel the need for any further discussion? Is there a motion that anyone would like to make?
I'll make a motion that we pass on voting on Article 3 tonight and do it at our next meeting when we have more information.
So there's a motion to table the matter until Wednesday. Is there a second?
I saw Judy's hand.
Oh,
Second.
Okay. So I think she was saying the same thing.
okay. Madam Secretary, would you please conduct a vote?
Can I ask a question?
Question?
Sorry.
Sure.
So if we're moving it to vote on Wednesday, what if we don't have more information on Wednesday and where we are? So we're just going to vote with what we know. Then do we make potentially could make another motion?
Yeah, we're tabling the issue. I think the motion is to table the issue until our next meeting that we have scheduled to Wednesday.
Just before we do this.
Sure.
I just want to clarify. So us voting tonight does not help you in any way. Just to be clear.
Or changing.
No, because, it's the select board that will be doing the negotiating, and we would bring you all the information for a recommendation once it's complete, so it doesn't have an effect on that.
All right.
It's helpful to hear the discussion, hear the questions, hear the comments, and in terms of our thinking about it, but that's.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Any other discussion?
Hey,
Do you want to check, or?
I have my hand up.
Yes, Judy?
Thank you. So we're talking Wednesday, just 2 days from today, correct? So
Yes.
we're only delaying this by 2 days. And can it be agreed, or, I don't know, bouncing around for words tonight, aren't I? So in other words, we might not have to enter into discussion again on Wednesday if we feel as though we've concluded discussion this evening. And the only thing that this delay is asking for is a little more information on money. And so we don't have to go through the whole round of,
Oh, but we could though, couldn't we?
well, would we want to? So we could curtail discussion just to, it only changed by 5 million or 500,000. Oh, good, let's vote. Is that, did I make myself clear?
We would table the issue to Wednesday.
Okay.
If there was a motion made on Wednesday, we would have to have at least the opportunity for a discussion.
Right. But we wouldn't have to go 2 hours of discussion as we did tonight and go over.
As Henry said, it depends what we have for dinner that night, right?
Yeah, okay. Well,
Okay.
who's cooking? Who's cooking?
So, does that answer your question, Judy?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, Henny has his hand up too.
As someone who will likely not be here on Wednesday because I'm supposed to be on a plane, we'll see if that actually happens. I have an interest in making a motion to approve this right now. I know there's a motion on the table, but I want to be clear that if that motion should not carry, there will be another motion to approve this. I think it's well discussed. I think all the members are here. And I think if we're moving the vote to Wednesday, that's fine. Those of us who will not be here cannot vote in absentia then. And so I would make the motion now since I think it is what it is.
Thank you for that. Okay, so there's a motion that's on the, it's made and seconded. Would you please conduct the vote?
Wait, can I just make one?
Sure.
Before, I do want, I know I said it before, I know Henny just mentioned it, having the experience of taking roll throughout the fall, I just want to underline, like, it is incredibly rare. I think the only other time that we had everyone in attendance might have been at the fall town meeting. So it is just unusual, and that's, what resonated with me is, like, for these ones that it's important, there's a lot of discussion, that I do think there's a lot to be said for having the vote when everyone is.
So we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded, and we can vote on it.
May we please conduct the roll call vote? Thank you.
So Steve Geister.
Table it.
So that's either yes or no. Yes to your motion.
Yes. Table it.
Lorraine.
No.
Tom.
Yes.
Steve Rhines.
No.
Lori.
Yes.
Allison.
Yes.
JJ,
Yes.
Amanda,
No.
Jareen,
Yes, Steve.
Judy,
Yes.
Jay.
I'm sorry, to clarify, we're voting to table?
Correct.
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
O'Henny.
No today and no on Wednesday.
All right, and then I am a no. Let me do some math. I think that the yeses have it. Yes.
The yeses have it. The matter will be tabled until Wednesday. Thank you. I'd like to note for the record that though the note was to table this to Wednesday, my assessment of our debate was that there was a lot of strongly voiced opinions that it was a good project that the town should proceed upon. And I'd ask you not to consider our not taking a vote at this time to be seen in a negative light towards this project. Nope.
Well said, Dave.
Okay. Those are the only, so, and so what we have done is we put on all of our agendas, all of the articles so that we can address them all. So this matter is already on the agenda for Wednesday. At Wednesday, we're going to have the presentation with regards to the town treasurer position, okay? And so we will come back on at 7 p.m. We would please be ready to go. Okay, is there any further discussion?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you for that.
Mr.
Minutes.
Chair?
Hold on, just give me a second, Henning. It was on the agenda to approve minutes. We did, myself and the secretary took another look at those minutes that have been presented to us, and we're going to actually table that as well in order to go through those one more time. Okay, so they'll show up again. Oh, Henny.
Yes, just due to confusion with my own family here, even about my vote. I wanted to clarify that my no on Wednesday was in regard to tabling it again on Wednesday, not in regard to the school building project. As you said, there is no aspersion on that project based on this vote today.
Yes. All right, thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded. Is anyone opposed? So accept that as a,
Allison is the motion, right?
Yes.
Okay.
so let the record reflect it was
All right. And
unanimous.
who made the second?
I seconded it.
Okay.
All right.
I don't want Karen to be upset.
Okay.